Hello, my friends. Today we're gonna meet a tough old lady called Turbobation, better known as Old Turbo Man. In the mountains of Ryogo, where the roads wind through dark forests and steep cliffs, the elders still tell the story of Old Turbo. That's right, man. You heard it right, didn't you? It's Old Turbo. That's right, because this creepy old lady is something else. No one knows for sure when she appeared, but the first whispers started many decades ago when the machines began to cut through the mountain to open roads and lay asphalt, right? They say she was once an ordinary woman, a grandmother named Hanae, who lived alone in a cabin by the old Pilgrim's Trail. She was a kind but quiet person, forgotten, taking care of her chickens and weaving bamboo baskets. Everything changed on a stormy night. A group of young people, drunk and laughing loudly, right? They were speeding down the road in their car. The rain had turned the road into mud. Man, and they didn't see Hanae crossing with her basket. The impact was brutal. Her body was thrown into the ravine while the boys, in panic, ran away without looking back. They didn't even care, man. What's that? No one came to get Hanae. The forest swallowed her, and her cabin rotted away over time, but something remained. Months later, the first reports began. Night drivers spoke of a hunched figure by the side of the road, an old woman with disheveled white hair wearing a torn kimono. She appeared suddenly, as if she emerged from the thick fog, and then did she run? They weren't awkward, shaky steps like those of an old woman, but an impossible run, faster than any animal. Her feet barely touched the ground, and the sound of her hoarse breathing echoed like a broken engine. Some said she could catch up with cars, banging on the window with bony hands and shouting, "Slow down, slow down." But Old Turbo, as they came to call her, wasn't just a warning. There was something darker about her. A truck driver once claimed he saw her in his mirror, right? Keeping pace at about 80 kilometers per hour, she sped up, man, and he sped up even more. When he looked again, she was inside the truck, sitting in the passenger seat. Damn, my friend, now things got crazy. Her face was so close that he could smell the scent of wet earth coming from the old lady. "You ran too much," she grumbled before disappearing. The next morning, they found the truck overturned on a curve. The driver was alive, but he was mute from terror. The guy didn't say a word, man. He just kept staring into nothing, trembling. The more superstitious ones say that Hanayama didn't really die that night. Anger and loneliness trapped her on the road, and her spirit merged with the roar of the engines and the biting wind of the mountains. She doesn't forgive those who disrespect the silence of that place. Others say she steals something from the reckless. Not their lives, but pieces of their souls. A man who survived swears that after seeing her, he was never able to run or even walk fast again. His legs trembled as if she had taken his strength. To escape from Old Turbo, the locals have their rules. Never drive above the speed limit at night, never honk on the mountain road where she stays, right? And if you see a hunched figure on the road, lower your head and murmur an apology. Some leave offerings on the roadside, coins, sake, or a handful of rice, hoping to appease the spirit. Even today, on rainy nights, drivers crossing Mount Roko keep their eyes fixed straight ahead. Because if you look in the rearview mirror and see a shadow running after you, it's already too late. The Old Turbo never rests, and it always catches up with those who challenge the silence of the mountains. I don't know about you, my friends, but I have no desire to take that road. Man, that old lady is something else. Not me. I'm just gonna mind my own business. A hug, my friends. Hello, my dear ones. This story begins with Big Charlie, a grotesque and fascinating creature, the result of a macabre experiment. Imagine, man, scientists in a dark laboratory mixing beef, cows, chickens, and who knows what else, right? In the hope of creating an inexhaustible source of food, the plan was ambitious, but something went terribly wrong. The experiment came to life, turning into Big Charlie, a misshapen, fleshy being that escaped from the meat processing factory where it was created. And in a way, the experiment was a success. Big Charlie produces meat non-stop, man. Constantly, pieces of its flesh break off, falling to the ground like living scraps. These pieces aren't just waste, they evolve, gaining forms of their own, and becoming the Lou Nuggets, pink adorable creatures, each with a unique shape. Small, with tiny legs, and clumsy, with those peculiar eyes, the Lou Nuggets are harmless, almost charming. But there's a dark secret. Under very specific circumstances, a Lou Nugget can transform into something much more dangerous. And that's where the lamb comes in. The lamb isn't born by accident. He's the product of a bizarre and almost impossible process. A Lou Nugget, Big Charlie's meat, ionic radiation, and finally, a curse. This combination gives life to a pink, fleshy creature with a body that vaguely resembles a lamb, but without a face. Just a big void where there should be eyes and a mouth, man. Anyone who faces it feels as if they're looking into an abyss, and the abyss looks back. It's a presence that suffocates you, that smells of rot and death. Unlike the Lou Nuggets, who are peaceful and curious, the lamb is a supernatural entity with terrifying powers. He levitates, floating silently in the air, and releases such a strong odor that it can suffocate anyone nearby. But his true gifts are even more sinister. The lamb uses his mind to cause massive psychic damage, capable of coagulating the blood inside the victim's body, stopping their brains. In a matter of moments, he can reverse gravity around him, lifting people and objects to deadly heights before dropping them for a fatal fall. As if all that weren't enough, he is a metaphysical being. Bullets and physical weapons don't affect him, like a specter that is both there and not there at the same time. But what makes the lamb dangerous? That depends on who you are. There are those who say he's a vigilante, a patron saint who hunts wrongdoers, punishing those who commit crimes and atrocities. Others believe that he was once worshipped by an apocalyptic cult. The most accepted theory, however, is that the lamb is a spirit of terror, something dark that eliminates its own kind. An example of this is in the first known description of him. A woman who couldn't sleep saw her backyard security lights turn on. There was the lamb. He stared at her with an accusatory weight. The smell was unbearable, and then she disappeared, probably lifeless. When it was created, it may have destroyed its creators, considering its own birth an atrocity worthy of punishment. Maybe he sees Big Charlie and the New Nuggets as extensions of himself. Something to be eliminated, eradicated from the earth. He's not necessarily evil, but he's incredibly dangerous, especially for anyone who has something to hide. And if you encounter him, run. Don't look back. Don't try to fight. And above all, hope that he hasn't come after you. Hello my friends, Leo Augusto React here. And today we're going to learn about a bizarre creature that's been haunting some places out there. And its name is the Rake. It's a thin, humanoid creature with gray skin and shiny black eyes, without a defined face, and with sharp claws that can cut easily. Its name comes from old reports, but no one knows what it is. A supernatural monster, an experiment, or a living nightmare? It appears at night, moving in a strange way, sometimes crawling, sometimes running, and it seems attracted to humans, especially when they are vulnerable. Bro, old records mention terrifying encounters. In 1691, a sailor wrote about a naked figure that watched him in bed, whispering his name before running away. In 1880, a mother saw Rake in her children's room, crouching, and as it escaped, she saw giant claws. But thank God the children were fine. These reports suggest that he has been stalking humans for centuries, always watching before fleeing. The main story takes place in 2003 in a rural house in the state of New York. Clara, James, and their daughter Emily start to notice signs, scratches on the windows, strange footprints, and a weird nighttime stench. One night, Clara wakes up with a Reiki over her, staring at her in silence. She screams and it runs away. In the following days, the tension grows. Bro, Emily wakes up screaming that the ugly man is talking to her. Man, that's terrifying, bro. Clara sees him next to her daughter, whispering, "I saw her first," before disappearing. The final attack comes quickly. James, armed, shoots at a shadow, but the Reiki ignores him, tears his arm, and drags him into the darkness. Clara, locked in with Emily, hears the screams of her husband who perishes. The next morning, only blood remains in the backyard. The police don't find anything, no trace of him or the creature. Clara and Emily run away, but the trauma leaves the girl mute, drawing the creature non-stop on the walls, on paper, everywhere. Poor little thing. Months later, Clara reports that Reiki came back. She sees him outside the new apartment, then inside. Near Emily, he whispers something and disappears. And the next morning, Emily is not alive. Officially a heart attack, but Clara knows the truth. She promises to expose the creature, but disappears soon after. Reiki keeps appearing in reports. A figure that watches from the window, whispers in the dark, or attacks without warning. He doesn't explain what he wants, he just haunts, kills, and disappears, leaving fear and mystery. In rural areas, where houses are isolated among forests, he seems more real, a terror that lives in the shadows. Bloca. Subscribe to. There. You'll see the store is negative. I never bucket with Leo Augusto's Comics React. Alright?